This is the talk show that takes a no-holds-barred approach to politics, where truth and integrity are the standard and the Constitution honored. From Renaissance Studios, this is Champion News Talk Radio.
Good morning and welcome to a great edition of Champion News Talk Radio, brought to you by championnews.net. We are your choice for the conservative voice. This is Ann Parisi, and today our founder, Jack Roser, and myself have Chris Jenner with us. And before we started the show this morning, we could have done a whole show on what we were talking about.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've known Mr. Jenner for quite a while, and the good work he's doing on school boards. So,
well, Chris is on the school board.
Yeah. Yes.
In School District 26?
26.
And where is that, Chris?
It's the K through 8 district in Cary, up in McHenry County.
Okay. Now, you know, we have school board elections coming. We just finished with this big presidential election and everything. 11% of voters actually turn out for school board elections. They're obviously not that important, are they?
Well, in my opinion, they are, and I've been going around to various groups and speaking about, you know, why run for local office, how to run for local office. You know, because of the apathy, it's really not that hard to get elected, and it's not that hard to have an impact either.
Why are they important? Why run for a local office like a school board?
Have you looked at your property tax bill lately?
Ugh.
60% or more of your tax bill is for schools, and 80% of that money is for salaries. It's the big thing that has, it's a local tax, and the excesses that were done at the local level, especially on pensions, by 1996 had gotten so huge they couldn't pay the pensions locally, so they shoved it up to the legislature to provide the money, and they went bonkers there. With the money that came out of the teachers' union, they completely corrupted the whole legislature, and as a result, the pension system is $160 billion in debt.
And it's not just the local property taxes, too. If you look at what's going on with state financing, state aid to schools has been continually dropping. Now, we just had a 67% hike in state income tax, and yet the state aid to schools is going down. Where did all the money go? And I believe by 2016...
that's the ADA that you're talking about, average daily attendance.
That's part of what drives the state aid to schools. But yet the foundation level is being flat or it's going down. So we're getting less money every year from the state.
Yeah.
Therefore, the local property tax component, you know, the percentage increases. We're probably... in my district, we're probably 75% funded locally.
Yeah.
And by 2016, I think we're going to be to the point where you will see more money being spent by the state on pensions than you will on state aid to, you know, schools.
To actually fund the schools, the teachers' pensions, which they negotiate during some of these closed school board meetings, correct?
Correct.
Those don't have to be closed, do they?
Negotiations don't have to be closed. I mean, obviously, traditionally, they always are. It's an exception to the Open Meetings Act. In other words, districts are allowed, or any public body is allowed to go into closed session to negotiate, but there's no law that says they have to.
Now, when
the schools thing, when you do decide to go into closed thing, you guys really disappear from sight. Nobody's allowed to interfere. There are cases where people that wanted to present some outside wisdom and influence the board were prosecuted and convicted for breaking the law. Yeah.
Wow, that's harsh.
It goes that far.
And they're the taxpayer.
One thing I think your listeners might want to be aware of regarding closed session, bodies of government are required to keep minutes of their closed sessions, and twice a year they're required to review all the minutes of closed session and decide if they can be released or be made available through Freedom of Information Act to the public. So you could go to your local school district and say, I want to see which closed meetings you've made minutes available for, and I'd like to see copies of those minutes. You can do that, but that's something that hasn't really been tested.
You know, the school districts have been pestered for Freedom of Information Act, and they really don't want to let their tawdry linen be put out on the public line, because boy, do they stink as operators, which I have a lot to say about that. But they don't want this stuff to get out. And then, so now you've revealed something I hadn't thought of. By making it a closed meeting, they put it beyond what you can get from them. What's the right name for getting...
Freedom of Information Act?
Freedom of Information Act doesn't apply if it's a closed meeting. They can hide their dirty laundry.
They can, and what's interesting too is the Illinois Association of School Boards in 2010 adopted a position, it's position 621, that basically urges legislators to weaken the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act, to basically extend how long schools have to respond, to make it easier for them to not be, fully transparent.
They have every reason to hide it, because their dirty laundry is really spotty and filthy all over. Since I've been on this track, I've been a skunk at a picnic for 40 years on this education scam. And it started when I was head of a homeowners group in Arlington Heights. And they wanted to run a referendum. I thought, let's get them in here and tell us about it. And boy, I opened Pandora's box of crazy information right then that's involved me for over 40 years. I've made a study of not so much the results of education, although that's not so hard to come by, because arguably, the results that they get in the public school system are not very good, especially lousy in Chicago and most big cities, very poor, much better usually out in urban areas. But the results are bad, but it's subjective. You might have different ideas about whether you should teach socialism or Americanism in the history classes, and obviously our president has a wildly different idea there.
Just finishing up on transparency,
it's not arguable about the way they handled everything from building the buildings to fixing the roofs to salaries to pensions. This is the worst managed organization, if you can call the school districts organizations, because they are organized for just blowing money away. But if the management is terrible.
But if you have good school board members, there is the propensity for accountability there.
They have great control.
That is what the need is. That is what the
really
solution to
Mr.
this
Jenner
egregious
here
problem
is really, I got to say, I've known you, maybe 10 years?
About 10 years.
Yeah. As a school board member, he and some of the cohorts he works with have provided initiative to go into the core of what their responsibility on a school board, what their responsibility as parents and taxpayers to the taxpayers really is. He's brought a very thoughtful change to it, and has proven that you don't have to be a crappy do-nothing board. You really can do things.
That's one thing you can do. There's a lot of things you can affect change, a lot of ways to affect change by joining or by being elected to a local governing body, such as a school board. There's a number of policies that we've put in place in District 26 that we refer to as good governance policies, and transparency is one of them. We have a policy on voluntary transparency. School code requires districts to put certain information on their websites. But we go beyond that. We said, well, okay, of course we're going to put everything that the state requires us to, but here are 10 other things that we will put on our website. Budgets over the last minimum 3 years, audited financial reports over the last 3 years, just a number of things that go well beyond what's required by the state.
And that was the school board that decided to hold their people accountable.
And when we put these policies in place, the process is very interesting, because you bring this up in a public meeting and you say, I would like to establish a policy that goes beyond what the state requires. And do you want to see a board member sit in a public meeting and say, no, I disagree, I'm going to vote no on that? They vote yes. When we put good governance policies on the table, they're very hard for people to sit in public and say, no, we want pay for play. No, we want there to be collusion.
So really, the best line of defense for the hardworking taxpayer is the school board member.
Yeah, I think it's a very good place to start.
The opportunity is there to do really a good job. It's very difficult, though, because you're up against very powerful forces in the teachers' union.
You do need to have kind of tough skin, as I know you're very familiar with. Yours is extremely tough.
Why do you need to have tough skin? Just before we go to break here in the next 20 seconds.
When you start talking about some of these good governance policies, you will generally be labeled as a anti-education, teacher-hating, and kid, hostile.
Child hater. I've been called a child hater.
Yeah, child hater, and so on.
You know what? I want to hear more about some of these things that you hear as a school board member when you're working for the taxpayer. When we come back, we're going to be right back after the break. Stay with us.